everybody, it's Jean here, Jean's Block Party 2019. This is block number 16 week. No, not week 16, block number 16. I showed you in my previous video block number 15, right? And our little half square triangles. Well, block number 16, which I gave you a heads up, this is block number 16. And in video block number 15, I was showing you how to do half square triangles, making 8 at a time. It's just this block is just half square triangles. We've been learning how to make them 2 at a time out of 2 pieces of fabric. You draw the diagonal, you stitch on either side of the line, you take the dog ears, you trim it down to the size. Well, this week, it's an unusual method how we're making 8 at a time. So this block, I was half square triangle crazy. There's nothing else to it, just half square triangles in this block. And this is a true 16 patch. There are 16 identical half square triangles in this quilt block here. If you notice, I have a pinwheel in the center of the block. And again, as I was showing you on block number 15, I actually ironed the seams open to get that lovely point. When we did our pinwheel block, I didn't. I don't. Sometimes I do and sometimes I didn't. For all of these seams, I ironed the seam open for that lovely point. So this isn't hard. After you make your half square triangles and square them up, again, I err on the larger side and I trim them down. You could have done it exact, but I'm thinking I just want to make it exactly the same size when I go to put it together. And so there was a tiny little bit of fabric waste. I'm cool with that. So that's the measurements I give you. And again, I was trying to explain in video 15 why I tell you to do this at a scant 1/4 of an inch. Scant 1/4 of an inch is just a 1/4 inch seam, 1 or 2 threads, fibers smaller. And you do that because there's a lot of seams in a quilt block. The more complicated a quilt block could be, it makes a lot of sense that so many seams, with that being, you had to be incredibly precise. It would be a little bit easier to get your desired size block at the end of the day by doing a scant 1/4 inch seam. Makes a lot of sense. So I tell you how to do that. I show you how to do that. A lot of people, as I said in video 15, were like, oh, how do you do a scant 1/4 inch? And I'm like, well, if you've perfected your 1/4 of an inch, which I hopefully by now you beginners will have, you just do it. Maybe you want to practice, and I say that. Just do it slightly smaller and measure it. Just slightly tinier, smaller. And that will allow for all of the seams. This is, as I was making it, as I was saying, it was easy for me, but hopefully you won't be too daunted by it. You won't be too daunted by it. You're making a pinwheel and then you're making all these. And so you're having all of these points to match. But I think the way we've broken it down, the way we sew it, the way we carefully cut it, 1 at a time. Last week's flying geese, my colorful flying geese, everybody's like, oh, that was such an easy block. Which it was. It was what? 6, sit here, right here in front of me. 6 pieces of fabric, easy, large pieces of fabric. There's a lot of smaller pieces of fabric in here, and breaking it down. So, but I show you how to make 16 flying geese, 8 at a time, and then putting 16 of them together. Not flying geese, excuse me. Half square triangles. So this is our block number 16, a sparkling star, 2 contrast fabrics. 2 high contrast fabrics. Yeah, very pretty. I like that. So block number 15 and block number 16 this week. I don't think you'll be saying, oh, they were real easy blocks. But I think you can do it. I think you can do it. So that's that. The tutorial to follow is for block 16. I appreciate everybody's support. Send in your pictures to truelovequiltsforyou@gmail.com, and I'll put them up on my webpage, the whateverquiltclub.com. Beautiful, beautiful, very, very well executed, lovely colorways quilt blocks. If you haven't gone to it, go to my webpage and under 2019 viewer blocks. They're super. So when we get, oh, this week we have 8 more. So you can start sending me your number 8 to 16. Oh, as I was saying again in video 15, and I repeat myself, but that's okay if you're just tuning in here. We have done 16 blocks already, and I was saying I don't know the math. I should figure it out, but it might be a bit much. It might be a bit much with sashing. I was talking to Jen about it, and she's like, oh, that might be a little bit much for a beginner to try to quilt it, because most of you will have a small domestic sewing machine. And to try to quilt that after we baste it, however you want to baste it, when we get to that point, I'll walk you through that. And then try to, sandwich it, backing, try to quilt that in your home machine. I don't want you to be daunted. So I'm going to reiterate that any time you could stop. Like, there are 16 blocks, and I'll put this up, I'll put my 16 blocks, the photograph of my 16 blocks. It's a lovely little quilt. I could just sew them together and make a beautiful little lap quilt. So if that's what you want to do that. By all means. Don't be like, oh, I'm doing this to the end, and at the end go, oh, I'm panicking, and I can't do this because it's a little bit too big for a beginner. I have confidence in you guys, but I don't want you to be overwhelmed and just put your beautiful blocks away and say, I can't do that. So if you, at this point even, the lovely little 16 blocks sewn together, so pretty, so lovely, and then continue making more blocks if you want. By all means, whatever you're comfortable with. I don't want you to stress about like, oh my gosh, how are we going to quilt this? We'll get to that when we come to it. And should be fun, right? So anyway, that's block number 16. Don't hate me. It's not a real easy block this week, but you got this, folks. And yeah, so that's block 16, tutorial to follow. And again, thank you for all your support. Appreciate it very much. So, block number 16. We've done block number 15, and as I was telling you, I've pulled, this is block number 15, and I'm pulling this week from my sort of my burgundy and creams or my tans pile. Every week I'm changing it up. So this week I'm doing the burgundy and tan. So this was block number 15. We're concentrating on stars this week, but we're also concentrating on a different method of making our half square triangles. Now with block number 15, you saw how I created our 8 half square triangles here and then put it in together with this configuration. Well, this block number 16 is basically the same, but I'm doing 16 half square triangles, but very simple. Now I haven't put fabric A or fabric B, and I will show you why. You'll see why. I've pulled 2 fabrics, 2 high contrasting fabrics for this block, and I'm taking in from my 10-inch squares. So here's 2 fabrics. We're cutting the exact same fabric, okay? Measurements from fabric A and from fabric B, we're cutting 2 each 7-inch squares. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scratch this together just as they came off of my layer cake. This is a pinked edge. I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to find my 7-inch. I'm going to find my 7-inch by 7-inch square at the top of the edge of the pinked edge, the top of the mountain. I'll put my 7-inch square. I'm going to hold that very carefully. Open my cutter and cut my 7-inch square. So that's fabric A. Fabric B, you'll do the exact same thing. And if you had done, there's two 10-inch squares here. I'm lining them up nice, scratched together, and I'm finding my 7-inch by 7-inch squares. We're doing exactly what we did in block 15 with our block 16. We're just making twice as many. So it's quite easy this block this week. It's just the challenge, if it is a challenge, is putting them together. With 16 units instead of 9 units, which we were doing. So what am I going to do? I'm going to draw a diagonal line. Oh, it's interesting. Look at that. This pattern, this fabric has like a diagonal lines. Look at that. So it's almost, look at that. It's almost on the, look at that. It's almost on the diagonal line. Almost, not quite. So diagonal to diagonal on the two lighter bits. Diagonal to diagonal. So there we go. Now I'm going to put the right sides together. I'll put the right sides together. And hopefully you'll have seen block number 15. If you're new, don't do this block. Go back to block number 15 because we're doing the exact same thing. I'm going to put my pretty sides to pretty side, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch. Remember the scant 1/4 of an inch, just slightly smaller than a 1/4 of an inch, just a hair. You'll have perfected by this time, by block number 16 or 15, you will have perfected your 1/4 inch seam, hopefully. So now I'm going to just stitch. I'm not going to show you how because I've already done that in block 15. So I'll end up with stitching 2 lines there, 2 lines there on both blocks. I have sewn these units together with the stitching on either side of this line. You can't really see it, but I've used my white thread and I've sewn it on either side, and there is that, if you refer again back to block number 15, when we were making these half square triangle units, there's that little square in the middle where the 2 lines intersect. There's 2 coming this diagonal, there's 2 coming this diagonal, so there's a little square there. Well, now I've gone over and I've sewn them and I've ironed them. So now, this is in the frame, yes. Now I've set my block up and I'm going to cut between those stitching lines. I'm going to cut on that marked line, right? Now this is where I'm going to carefully lift this, and I'm going to find my diagonal line, not having shifted them, and I'm going to cut, making sure my ruler's nice and straight. I'm going to cut on that diagonal line. And I have my 4 units there. Now I do have to shift these. That's okay. I'm going to make them nice and square on my board. I'm going to sort of scratch them back together where they wanted to go. And I'm going to, again, making sure they're nice. I can see that little square in the center. Now I'm going to be cutting on that, between that diagonal, on the box of the square, from one corner to one corner. I can see it, but then I'm going to also line up my ruler lovely and straight, coming off of I'm using my lines here, so I'm right in the dead center. Right dead center. Close my thing, lift my ruler, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Again, you can't really see that little box. I can. There to there. My ruler's lovely and straight. So my units out here are straight, holding it, and slicing it through. And there again, like in block 15, we have 8 half square triangles, which I am going to be, again, just like in block 15, I just thought I'm going to be cutting these down. I'm going to be cutting these down 1/4 of an inch. These are 3 inches, but when we get, I'll do that when we get to it. Now I'm going to cut this bit apart. I'm going to go set these seams, and then I'm going to roll up to this dark side, and then we can put our block together. Oh, sorry about that. I have sewn all of my half square triangles, and I have gone over, cut them, and pressed them all up to the dark side. Now I'm trimming them down. I've cut all of my 16 half square triangles. That's all we have in this block this week, 16. It has made a bit of a scrap pile, but I'm assured now that they're all the same size, and I'm fine with cutting them down. I imagine we could have cut these squares to make them not so much waste, which I don't care about at all, but perhaps if you like 6.5 maybe, I'm not quite sure. I do 7-inch squares and then I can cut them down. So now we're ready to put our block together. Very simple. Just making 16 half square triangles. Now this again, this is the configuration of our sort of more of a sparkling star. I'm just going to put these, let me just see how this goes. Like that. And then this one goes this way, and the dark goes this way. Again, I'm doing it on my design board here. It's exciting. And they do that. Let's see that one. And this one goes like that. It's not exactly a star, more like a shooting star. Star shapes, as you can see. And then that one, let's see, goes there. Again, this you have to really do this visually. I love my little design board here because again, you can see this sort of the star shape. Is that what? No, let me just see. I think that goes like that. There you go. And then this one goes like this one. Yeah, so you can see the star forming. Again, 14 pieces this week. I mean, 16 pieces this week. But it's just a matter of, oh, there you go. Let me just see what that, oh yeah, see what that looks like? That is so pretty. So there is my pretty star put together. Now, again, 4 rows. You'll be doing this in your sleep. This is more of an all-over star pattern. So what we're going to do is we're just going to work, I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine, and we're just going to work row by row. We're just going to do the top row. Pretty side, pretty side, pretty side, pretty side, and then the center seam. So I'm over at my sewing machine very, very carefully. I'm going to be putting these blocks together, pretty side to pretty side, row by row, making sure that I'm sewing the correct units together. I'm at my ironing board with my design thing, and I've just sewn everything. I've sewn everything together. I've not pressed anything. But look! I got a new ironing board cover. Oh, I was going to make an ironing board cover, do a tutorial, and I saw one for a couple bucks. I got one. Sorry, folks. Anyway, so here's my unit. As you can see, we have a pinwheel in the center. Okay, these are where these pieces are going to come together. Now, I am going to take this unit first here, and I'm going to press that seam open. I showed you. I'm going to press that seam open and press these seams to where they want to go. That one wants to go there, and that one wants to go over there. And again, I always feel if the back of your quilt looks lovely, if your back of your quilt block looks lovely, then your front's going to be absolutely perfect. Now, this is dark light, and you might be going, oh, where do I press it to? Well, I'm going to leave it to you, except for this center seam here. So I'm going to take this one here, and that one wants to go that way, and I'm going to press this open here. I think that wants to go that way. Because we have so many seams here, I don't want you to get overwhelmed, though. I don't want you to get overwhelmed with all of the seams, because this is not a beginner block, but you guys are not beginners, I don't think. I think you've done, you know, however many months now we've done this. So there is our pinwheel. And there is our unit to be sewn together. Now I'm going to do this one, and I'm just going to push these seams where they sort of want to go, which is at that point over that way. And then we're just going to be putting the seams together in all of the. It's more important at this point to worry about your 1/4 inch seams than nesting your seams, if that makes any sense. I may be contradicting myself, but I think it's more important to worry about your points than it is to worry about nesting. Usually that makes it easier, but it's okay in this regard because there are so many points to worry about. Now, I'm going to take this over. Everything is nice and pressed, and I'm going to just do this. Actually, I'm going to do my center unit. Get this over and done with. Now, this pinwheel here, those seams, that is what I want to match. I've pressed them both open, so there's like a little square there of all 4 of the fabrics where the 1/4 inch seam comes in. So I want you to pin that very carefully, matching those seams, maybe put one before and one after, and then matching these seams up, and then stitching from one end to the other. And then we'll have our pinwheel block done, and then I'll come back and I'll put this one over to here, and I'll put the bottom up to that unit. And then hopefully we'll have a 9.5 inch square. I've sewn my blocks together, and it's made this pretty star, lots of star stuff. And I'm very pleased with my center point here, which has been stitched open. Now, I'm going to set these seams very, very carefully. Very important. I set those seams because there's a lot going on in this block. Again, not a difficult block, but one that you have to think about. I mean, you're doing just one unit. You're not cutting, you know, you've made your units. Now, what I'm doing is I'm going to give this a little bit of spray sizing or starch, whatever that is. And then I'm going to figure out from the top where my seam wants to go. Now, that one wants to roll up to the top there, if you can see that. I go one seam at a time. I just nudge it, then I go up to the next seam, and that one wants to roll up to the top too. Pretty much, I guess, or maybe no, maybe, so that one wants to roll up to the top. And you see how I'm just pressing it nice and flat, or ironing, or whatever I'm doing. I'm going just one seam at a time. That's a little bit off. There's a lot to match up, but I'm thrilled the way it's turned out. My pinwheel looks really very, very good in the middle. I'm going to turn this around, and yeah, I think this, no, actually I don't have to turn it around. I think that one wants just to go up there. You see that? You see that? I'm going to set that again, and then I'm just going to nudge that up with the nose of my iron. Just nudge it up so I don't get any nasty tucks on the front of my quilt, and then I'll just roll it up. And there is my lovely ironed block. So there, ta-da, is my finished pretty wonky star block this week, about block number 16. Let me just see if it measures. Yeah, I thought so. There is one side that's a little bit funky, but I still don't want to be, I'm still aware of my 1/4 inch seam, so it's just slightly. But I have a nice 1/4 inch seam, so I can square this up to my 9.5. I'm okay on this side, and I'm okay down here. It's just over here. It's just slightly big, which is good, good. That side's good. Slightly large up there. Take a little bit off that side. Being aware of my 1/4 inch seams, which go into the next block. And this one is a little bit, it's pretty good, and it's just over here a little bit, but I'm aware I got my 1/4 inch there, and that will end up a 1/4 inch. Just a little slice off there, and there we have my 9.5 inch square block. A very, very pretty, bright, sparkling star. 2 high contrast fabrics this week. Just 2 fabrics each, and I just think the stars add a little bit more sparkle throughout the quilt. So this one is my light star with my darker background, a little changing it up, and this is my dark star with a lighter background. So yeah, so there is block number 15 and block number 16. So I hope you're enjoying this. Yeah, our star blocks. We are stars this week. I hope this wasn't too much for you. I don't want you to stress over all your points, but if you've cut it and you've squared them up, I think you're going to be pretty good with it. And yeah, I've used a pretty floral. So from a distance, very, very pretty. I love it. Okay. So we will see you next week, folks. Thanks a lot. See you. Bye.